Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast. This podcast is designed for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to leave a legacy and will provide strategies that focus upon key elements for legacy creation, determining your desired impact and its benefit, increasing your legacy's reach by engaging key stakeholders, planning, prioritizing, and executing. Here's your host, Dr. Lois Sonstegard.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Building My Legacy podcast today. I have with me again Kate Fitzsimons. She is a resilience coach, comes to us from Australia. She works both in the United States and Australia, and I think elsewhere as well, perhaps, especially now that we have the internet so much available. Last two episodes, we talked about her 3 R's. That deal with how you can be resilient. So the first one was recognize your emotions, your feelings. Why are you reacting the way you are? So recognize what's happening, what your response is. Second was reflect. Reflect on what it is that's going on around you. And the third is reconstruct, regroup, recreate, what was it?
Redirect. All of those things, though. They hope that redirecting helps you regroup and recreate. So it is all about, comes under the umbrella of that. So yeah, it is redirecting our thinking and our focus, because that's really what's going to determine then what comes next. It's going to change how we're showing up, how we're feeling, and the action that we take.
Super. So what we want to do is take those 3 R's and talk a little bit about what do we do with specific situations in the workplace. And let's start with a difficult boss.
I feel like everyone just sat up straighter in their seats. They're like, oh, I'm listening.
What do you do? Okay, let's apply. Let's see what you suggest.
Yeah, well, I am really excited to be diving into this issue with you, Lois, as let's be honest, I know we have all come up against in the workplace that issue of having a difficult boss or even a difficult colleague or co-worker. So this can be applied to either. That it's just that person that constantly kind of seems to be getting on your nerves a little. And maybe even you're on the verge of considering leaving your job or trying to move departments or change teams, like just to try and get away from them, because you're at that point where you just can't handle the way that they act or the way that they treat you, or just the way that they seem to make you feel whenever you're around them or you have to interact with them. Like, I'm sure everyone listening is having at least one person coming to mind, right? Whether it's at this current job you're at or even a previous job, we can all think of that someone that we just wish so badly would be different than the way that they are. Maybe it's a boss that would explain their expectations more clearly and not expect you to just try and mind read them all the time. Or the boss who always seems to single you out to do that extra task in the workplace, always do the coffee run. You're like, why me? Seriously, you're picking on me. Or even the co-worker who you wish, I think we've all had this, you wish just didn't chew quite so loudly in the lunchroom when you're trying to sit and eat lunch. Or, the one who maybe takes a lot of the credit for an idea that you come up, is often, not really recognizing you and trying to take the credit for something you came up with. Whatever their behavior is that it seems to frustrate you, I just really want you to have front of your mind as you listen to this, that particular person, because over these next 15 minutes or so, I'm really going to walk you through, using my 3 R's, how to completely transform this relationship you have with them so they stop, firstly, frustrating you, and most especially getting in between you and your goals in the workplace, and from being the kind of employee or teammate that you really want to be for your workplace or whatever environment it is that you're working in. I'm telling you, I can help you completely change it. I really believe it only takes one sane person to change a relationship, and I'm going to show you how. But I do want to give a bit of a warning. Yes, but I know that some of this can be a little bit, it's tough love. Some of what I teach is tough love because I get it. and I'm not superhuman either, guys. I understand it's easier sometimes to just blame our boss or our colleagues and let them kind of be a scapegoat for why the team didn't meet the objective, that quarter, or get the project done on time, or why there was that heated argument in the boardroom. Because if you think about it, if we leave it as, it's their fault and we can't control them, then we don't have to take any action or responsibility. Then it's like, well, I don't have a choice but to be victim to their behavior or their management style, and there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah. So that can be tempting. I understand it, but I'm going to show you why there really is so much you can do to change this and work together with whatever that difficult boss or coworker is without having to feel so frustrated and hopeless about how they manage or operate in the workplace, and hence, stop letting your own progress and your own results kind of fall away. So I'm going to show you using these 3 R's. You can have that boss that you don't, doesn't show up how you'd ideally like them to, and still hit companies' objectives. And most importantly, enjoy your job. I think that's so important to, really be proud of who you're showing up as in the workplace, and just enjoying and loving being part of that team. It's super important, I think. You only get one life, and we spend so many hours of it at work. So as you mentioned, so we've been talking about these 3 R's, and this first R, as you mentioned, is to recognize. And I do this by saying, this is just dealing with this is focusing on difficult behavior, but of course anything that is in regards to bullying or any sort of abusive behavior is of course a different topic, and definitely should be addressed by, the appropriate support systems within your organization. But we are just covering that general overall difficult behavior of a boss who just constantly feels like a pain in your backside. So, I just wanted to preface that there are, of course, exceptions to this if there's any sort of threat to your own safety or well-being. But the recognize is just about, as you mentioned, really seeing clearly the true cause of your frustration. It's not something that's happening to you or outside of your control. It's not something out there in the world. In fact, this kind of blows people's mind, but a difficult person is not an outside circumstance. Difficult people don't just exist out there in the world. And we can see the truth of that by just separating out the facts of the situation from all our thoughts and interpretations and beliefs about it. For example, maybe, as I said, your colleague is sitting there chewing with their mouth open, or, maybe they deliver their part of the project 3 hours later than what they said they would, or your boss changes the deadline on you 3 times in a row. And all of those are neutral facts, right? This neutral outside circumstance that doesn't have any meaning within themselves. Then each of those facts don't cause you to feel any sort of frustration until you have thoughts like, I wish they didn't do that. That's so frustrating. That is so difficult. They are difficult, right? We label that behavior difficult. It is not an outside thing. It's not until we think that and our interpretation of it being difficult that then we cause ourselves to feel frustrated or irritated or resentful towards them.
So true.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we know this is true because what you may find to be annoying in someone, like I said, your boss taking a few days to reply to an email you send him, you might find that incredibly irritating, while your colleague might not mind it that much. She's like, oh, no, I kind of like it that he's not breathing down our necks, or gives us some time to figure it out.
Right.
So that would create a totally different feeling, right? She's not feeling frustrated because she's not labeling that a difficult behavior. She's not resisting it or arguing against it or saying it's frustrating, right? Or, your co-worker might feel frustrated because they think your manager breathes really loudly from his desk, while you might not notice it at all. So there's 2 completely different feelings because of 2 completely different interpretations. So we just really got to make clear, and it takes a lot of stepping up and a bit of taking responsibility just to realize whatever behavior or trait that your colleague or boss possesses is always neutral. And it doesn't cause you to feel frustrated until you think about it, process it, and choose to label it as difficult or annoying or thinking they should be different than the way that they are. So that's all in your thinking, as we mentioned in the ants in previous episodes, those automatic negative thoughts. And as I also explored for you, it's really the best news that I have, because if you are the cause of your own frustration towards them, it also means you can be the solution to it by recognizing, firstly, that it really is up to you how you choose to think about someone and what you choose to focus on in someone and how you choose to place them in your own mind. That is where we always have power. Like, we don't have the ability to go and change and control the boss. I wish if that would work for you, I would be all about it, but we don't have that power, guys. So we've got to just release that initial kind of instinct to want to resist and argue, and recognize there's just no upside to that. And I really want to show you that you can change your frustration without anything outside of you changing. We don't need to constantly change jobs to escape our frustration or stop feeling annoyed about that person. We simply need to just take the next 2 steps in this 3R strategy. So as I said, firstly is recognizing, separating the facts from your story to see you really are the cause of your frustration. And now it's about reflecting upon the impact and the values of these thoughts, because it is very tempting to want to stay in victim and blame mode, especially as most of us are literally brought up believing that it is the world and the people around us that's causing how we feel. Like, I know I grew up always saying things like, he's so frustrating, I'm so angry, she doesn't understand, I'm upset because they just don't care. And it is tempting to want to stay living in that place and to hold on to these thoughts, because our brain really has this tendency to want to keep thinking in the same way. And it also has a confirmation bias. Have you heard of this before, Lois, about the confirmation bias?
Yes, but please go on and explain it, because I think it's huge. Yeah.
So I love this, and I love especially teaching it to all my coaching clients, because the thing is, like, as soon as we believe something about a person or a situation, let's just say we believe that person is a difficult person and we've labeled that in our mind, we believe that, your brain will go out in the world and seek evidence to prove that true and to keep proving that that is correct. And this isn't intentional. It's your brain needing to find correlation and support for this belief. And the problem with that, like, it is often helpful if we have really great beliefs and helpful beliefs and beliefs that empower us. But when they're not helpful, the problem is that we're actually able to see little else that doesn't fit within our belief system. And I'm sure a great simple way to explain it to you all is, we've kind of all had that moment when you look up around the workplace, you're like, where's the stapler? And someone's like, oh, it's in the cupboard over there. And you're like, I don't think it's there. Okay, I'll go have a look. And you go and look, you're like, no, it's not in the cupboard. And they're like, no, look again. I put it in there a few hours. Nope, it's not in there. Still can't see it. And then they come over and they're like, it's right there. And it's like staring at you in the face. And you're like, how did you do that? It's like a ninja mind trick. But the truth is, our eye sees what the mind looks for. So your mind was saying it's not really there. And so it's crazy, but your eyes are literally filtering the world in front of you to prove that true. This isn't some airy fairy. It's how our brains and our system works. So just think about this then. If we take that little example and apply it to everyday life, if you believe that someone is difficult or frustrating, your mind is filtering in all the information and evidence that proves that belief true, while it's totally dismissing and filtering out any behavior or evidence that doesn't fit within your belief system that they're a difficult person. So, for example, you might hyper-focus on how your boss changed a deadline on you, but you're not going to stop to appreciate that he didn't really raise a fuss the other day when you were half an hour late getting into work with traffic that morning. You won't even notice that. Or you'll complain to your colleague about how messy your boss is in the kitchen, but then you won't notice how he's actually or she's actually the one who takes the trash out each week. Or, you'll ruminate over how, your boss didn't thank you in the meeting for helping to meet last week's target, but you won't appreciate the feedback from a client who says, oh, your boss raves about you all the time in sessions, or says what a great worker you are. Like, your brain is literally looking for reasons for you to feel frustrated and resentful towards your boss, not because it hates you, but that's because that's what your brain is designed to do. Filter the world through the lens of your belief systems. So just
So
know,
if
guys,
you
choose
have-
to...
So if
Sorry?
you have negative belief systems, you're going to filter in negatives.
Yeah, 100%. Once you choose to label someone annoying or difficult, your brain will get to work proving that true. So just be aware of that. And that's why initially, when I'm going to try and open your mind up to finding, more useful things to focus on, or when someone says like, look at the positives, and you're like, there are none, I can't see any. That's just your initial, confirmation bias, just going, no, we don't want to do that. We want to keep reinforcing, because our brain doesn't know when it's thinking a positive or negative or helpful or unhelpful thought. It just wants to keep thinking the same way because it wants to try and save energy. So that's a whole other topic of breaking the brain down, but just be aware of that initial kickback and resistance from your brain is very normal. And also be aware this confirmation bias will keep you spiraling kind of into that negativity if you don't pay attention to it. But firstly, recognizing and reflecting upon that. And also just wanted to give you a heads up on this, because of this confirmation bias, we often spend most of our time thinking about how other people should or shouldn't behave, and we spend very little time actually putting the spotlight back on ourselves and thinking about how are we behaving and reacting in interaction with them. So that's where this value of the second R of reflecting really comes in, because believe it or not, guys, we can actually also be the difficult ones sometimes.
No way.
No, I know, never, right? It may come as a shock, but yes, I'm sure in someone's story, in someone's mind, you and I have been the quote unquote difficult person to deal with. It does take two people to participate in a relationship, and rather than only, hyper focusing and ruminating over how the difficult boss should change or should be different or should be less uptight, why not also just take a moment to hit that pause button and kind of reflect upon how you may be contributing to the dynamic of the relationship, and how, even though it's super tempting to want to hold on to your story about that person, reflecting upon its impact can help you see that there's just no upside to it. It's only digging you further into the ditch. And reflecting, is the best way to sum it up, is to simply ask yourself, okay, how do I show up and act in this situation when I feel frustrated because I'm thinking they're being difficult? And as I said, that question I love to ask myself, Lois, that we spoke about earlier, is it's just two things. Do I take any productive action or show up in a way that I'm proud of when I'm thinking and feeling this way? Because as we've summarized, what I think creates how I feel drives how I act, and how I act creates results, and it has an effect. So if my boss says, you didn't put enough detail in this report, do it again, and I think he's so difficult, I'll feel frustrated. And when I feel frustrated with her, I might speak bluntly or curtly in response, stop asking questions when I don't understand things, maybe go and ruminate to a colleague about, in the kitchen over a coffee thinking she's so annoying, or take an extra long lunch break, or spend time on Facebook rather than concentrating on work, or taking long to reply to emails. Like, think about all that action and then tell me, Lois, like, what kind of results might you get in your relationship with your boss? Like, are they going to gain more or less respect for you when you kind of react in that way?
It's less, isn't it? And it becomes so self-fulfilling.
Yep.
We like playing victim. We like having it be your job, your responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think more and more, if we're going to change and get people to be integrated with one another and working together, we've got to be able to look at my part, my role. How am I interpreting things?
Yes, 100%. And I think, you got to remember every victim needs a villain, and it's easy to make the boss, or our managers or those people in slightly higher authorities the villain, because in the dynamic of your work relationship, you do have to follow their instructions and the tasks that they give you. But you can just say, and that is why I love that second part of the question of, but am I showing up in a way that I'm proud of? Just getting, like, you might have all the reasons in the world as to why they're being so unfair. But do you want to be the colleague that is constantly complaining? Do you want to be the colleague that's slacking off and letting down more of the team? Does that make you proud? As I said, be the change you want to see. If we want less negativity, less complaining, less victimhood in the workplace, it starts with us. And we can recognize and reflect upon that and see, like, okay, this boss might be difficult, but focusing on that in your mind over and over, it's your behavior is not bringing you any closer to your goals of the kind of employee you want to be at work. And this is where we've got to put our grown-up adult, pants on and really step up and take responsibility. Pointing the finger serves no purpose for yourself and anyone in the workplace. So reflecting upon how our thoughts and feelings are causing us to show up and how we're interacting with those at work, we can see the truth that, as hard as it is to accept, sometimes the reality is other people do not drive our behavior or any sort of results. It's not, your boss's fault that you didn't get your, project done on time because he kept coming and interrupting you, and it's his fault. No, it's probably all the mind drama and frustration you felt when you're thinking he shouldn't be doing that caused you to be unproductive and not get it done on time. Like, when we keep thinking someone is so difficult, if you reflect upon it, we often end up being the difficult ones. Just reflecting back their own behavior, in a different kind of way, but it's just as difficult and unproductive.
Because of the pushback that we create.
Yeah. Frustration is literally, think about how it feels in your body. It shuts you down. You lose your creativity and problem solving. And frustration is always a feeling that's created from resisting the way things are. Like, not opening up to that, but trying to change something you can't change is obviously going to cause you to feel frustrated. So now that we've recognized and reflected upon how we truly are the cause of our own frustration and how we really are the only ones responsible for how we show up at work, how we speak to our boss, how much or how little effort we put into, all of our work, all of it is on us and the story we tell ourselves about our boss and what we are focusing on when we're around them. So now, if it's all coming from our thinking, in order to then get a different result for ourselves, we have to start thinking differently about our boss and ourselves within this relationship with them. And that is what this third and final R is all about, of redirecting. That is how we make that choice of taking control of our mind by redirecting our perspective to those more useful, empowering things to focus on. Because, like, I'm not here trying to make us think all Pollyanna positive and like nothing's ever a worry and everyone's just amazing, and trying to, jump too far ahead. For me, as a coach, I'm not trying to coach my clients into positive thinking, but powerful thinking, purposeful thinkings that drives feelings and actions that take you closer to your goals and the kind of person you want to be in the world and in your workplace. So just to finish up, I want to offer you 3 optional thoughts that I just want you to open your mind up to. Kind of try them on, like trying on a hat or, a top at in a shop. I'm not saying you have to put these on, but I want to offer them and make these invitations to you because they're super powerful to redirect your mind to the next time you want to lose your mind at someone in your workplace. So, as I said, the first kind of thought I'm always reminding myself of when I feel like, that frustration come over me in interaction with someone is reminding myself they're not being quote unquote difficult. They're just actually being who they are. In like this, they're not like it's not like they they wake up in the morning and they think, you know what, I just want to be so difficult in the workplace today. I want to make all my employees frustrated out of me, and I'm purposely going to go out of my way to just be really annoying. Like, I feel like very few managers out there really think about that. They're just showing up as who they are. If who they are is, taking longer to explain concepts, or just always double checking things with you, or anything like that, if that's their tendencies, they're not purposely trying to be difficult. I always just like to remind myself, people are just doing the best that they can from their own level of awareness and understanding.
Right.
Like, they might not be very self-aware, but guess what? Judging them for that, you're being less self-aware of you. So just reminding myself, they're doing the best they can. They're doing the best they can, even if their behavior is very, unfair, and it seems like, but truthfully, that is their best. Even if their best is terrible in your eyes, it's still their best for them. And I love to remind myself of that, because rather than feeling this intense frustration, I'm able to kind of soften it into more compassion and acceptance. Because I think about, if I'm being the difficult person, that's what I would really like in response to someone to just remember I'm a human being doing the best that I can. Because that's what our bosses are, believe it or not. Even if they're, in super powerful positions or whatever, they're still humans at the end of the day, with real life challenges going on in their personal life and all of that stuff. And so we need to just take away the titles that they sometimes have, and just remember, like, we don't even know what's going on in their life and their minds and all of that. And that just helps me take a breath and feel more compassion. And then when I feel more compassionate, I am not running then to my coworker to, ruminate about it. I am not huffing and puffing and, slamming doors and whatever it is, like getting that little bit frustrated, or picking up my phone to text my friend about how annoying my boss is. Like, because I'm like, oh, that's right, they're human just like me. And sometimes, yeah, so that helps, I think. And another one, if I can't quite wrap my brain around that person not being difficult, my brain really wants to argue that they are very difficult to work with, I just change it a little to, okay, like, my boss is challenging to work with, and that's okay. So the difference between this is, like, firstly, we say my boss is so difficult. There's always a silent sentence that follows of, and they shouldn't be. Like, think about it. It's almost like, well, my boss is so difficult. And it's like, so what? Well, they shouldn't be. Like, we're kind of resisting. But those last 3 words of, and that's okay, can kind of help you step back and stop resisting that reality and resisting their behavior, and kind of step more into acceptance. Byron Katie has a quote of, you can argue with reality, but you'll lose only 100% of the time. Like, it's a battle you're never going to win trying to resist. And we're not entitled for people to be any different than what they are. We're not entitled for everything to be easy and rainbows and daisies in the workplace, and everyone shows up how we expect them and how we think that they should. Right. There's always going to be people that are different, and differences can lead to challenges, but that's okay. And so rather than labeling difficult, I like just to label it challenging, because I feel like there's a little bit less of victimhood in it's a challenge versus this is so difficult to deal with. So yeah, what's your kind of feedback on those thoughts so far?
I love the idea, especially with the difficult. If the boss really truly is difficult, just saying, accepting it. So what? So that is the way it is. Because I think where we get stuck many times is in trying to change somebody. And the reality is you can only change yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the frustration comes from that drive, that need, that desire to change. Because if we can't, then we feel somewhat out of control. But if you accept it, then it's like you're back in control. Because you have acknowledged the constraints.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's it's so true. And I just want to take that one step further. We can really take this self-coaching to another level, and what I've always try and work on once I've kind of breathed into that acceptance and just keep reminding myself, and that's okay, is actually to just get curious even about the possibility that you can actually be thankful for the difficult people in your life, in the sense of sometimes they're a beautiful example of exactly how you don't want to show up in the world and how you don't want to treat people. And really recognizing how it feels to be at the receiving end of some of those actions and interactions, and how it really does leave a lot to be desired. Like, it can really, again, just that idea of being the change you want to see. Our difficult people really are some of our greatest teachers to do this work on our minds and taking responsibility for who we're being and our own actions. And it's not saying you have to give up who you are to connect with and learn from a difficult boss or colleague, but this is an opportunity you actually have to learn some new skills, some new communication and social skills, and challenge yourself to do more and be more for yourself and others, and broaden your own capabilities. And whether we need to do so in our communication or our patience or our courage or our compassion for other people, like, this is where we have the opportunity to put that into practice when we come up against people who show up in this world differently from the way that we wish they would.
The reality is we can't grow unless we have those challenges.
That is so very, very true. So I mentioned last time that powerful questions are a great way to redirect our minds when they're spinning on our ants, our negativity about that person. And something I really love to use to redirect my mind is this question. When I'm thinking they shouldn't be acting that way, they're so difficult, I love to ask myself, so how can I take one of their flaws to better one of my own? Like, if we're thinking, they're too much of a micromanager, or, they're too strict, or like whatever it is, or they don't listen properly, or they don't, they're not open-minded enough, or whatever it is we're complaining about. I just like to really ask myself, okay, what can I see in that I could actually use to better my own character? Like, maybe your boss isn't the greatest at explaining things clearly of what he wants you to kind of write in the report, and when you ask him a question, he just responds like, I just explained that to you, rather than instantly snapping back and giving him an attitude about how that's not fair, or that you always pick on me, or whatever it is. Like, what if you saw this as a chance for you to practice some sort of patience and compassion? And remember, your boss is just reacting from their perspective. And the beautiful thing is you get to react from your perspective. And your perspective is a choice. And I think difficult bosses, difficult people in general, always give us an opportunity to practice choosing patience and humility. Even when they're confused or have the wrong idea, rather than just getting all tense and frustrated in their face, you can remember, as I said, they're a human just like you, doing the best that they can.
They are doing the best they can. So on that note, we will end this podcast, and we will continue this series looking at applying these 3 R's to different situations in the workplace. So stay tuned. We have 7 more that we are going to go through with you, or 6 more, in terms of what's going on in the workplace and how you can really use these to make it a better situation for you, for everybody, actually.
Yes, that's it. As I say, love all the humans, the insecure ones, the judgmental ones, the negative ones, the unfair ones. Just love all the humans. That's what I tell myself.
Just love them. On that note, thank you, everybody, for listening to our podcast today. We look forward to seeing you very shortly again.
You've been listening to Building My Legacy podcast with Dr. Lois Sonstegard. To book your appointment with Dr. Sonstegard, visit www.buildtomorrow.com.